My dear, as you are aware, this is your sister's affair. In time, you shall have a wedding of your own. Lady Hartworth shared the rose-print love seat with Priscilla, whose ghostly complexion was red with agitation. Jocelyn, listen to reason. Pink flowers are the essence of elegance. Without them, you shall be utterly humiliated. Aurora glanced at her eldest brother Char, who was standing by the mantel near Kurt and Mr. Kensington. Lord Hartworth had taken up his usual place in his worn leather armchair. It was studded with copper that was shined daily by the servants. Aurora eased past the velvet divan where Jocelyn was seated next to Char's wife Shannon, acknowledged Mr. Kensington with a bow of her head, and kissed her brother Char on the cheek. Char smiled and inclined his head towards Priscilla, who was still going on about the necessity of pink in Jocelyn's wedding. Aurora dearly missed having her brother at home. Unlike breakfasts, family dinners were a tedious affair, but rather bearable when Char was around to laugh with her. No one else shared the same amusement during the dinner discussions, except for Shannon, of course. Aurora slid onto the divan quickly beside her sister-in-law and gently squeezed her hand. Shannon shot her a sideways smile that pricked her cheeks with tiny dimples. Father, you are mistaken. Change is inevitable. The king himself has expressed a most ardent interest in solar advances. Kurt's head was encircled by a cloud of smoke, a habit he had picked up at university, and with his shaggy red hair, he had the appearance of being on fire. My son, I fear it is you who is sorely misinformed. The king has no genuine interest in it. Tradition and decorum will outlast this solar nonsense. Priscilla, I am quite certain your sister is taking the latest fashion into consideration. Are you not, my dear? Aurora noticed Jocelyn tense at the question. Indeed, mother. Why is that, father? Char rarely entered debates between his brother and Lord Hartworth, but he rarely missed an opportunity to fuel them. His involvement is purely sentimental. If I recall, the project was of particular importance to his late son. Fine, but Jocelyn, you must have a strawberry cake with cream cheese frosting. Mr. Kensington nodded. His pride protruded from beneath a face covered in coarse brown whiskers. Ah, yes, I do believe the anniversary of his death is close at hand, is it not? Priscilla, you might do well to remember, Mrs. Kensington is allergic to strawberries. Shannon treaded lightly with her comment. Priscilla's green eyes glowed like hot embers. Well then, she doesn't have to eat any. Next Sunday marks a year since Prince Zachary's ship was lost at sea. Char's golden curls tickled his brow, which was drawn in sentiment as the other men bowed their heads to join in his silent reflection. A moment later, Kurt broke in. If that is the king's motivation, he will most assuredly continue his support in honor of his son's memory. Father, you must have seen there are already several carriages in Salzen that rely solely on solar power. Shannon, darling, did not your mother make a recommendation for Jocelyn's cake? Lady Hartworth said in a futile attempt to ease Priscilla's fury. Why, yes. She thought a tangerine cake with honeysuckle glaze would be an eloquent addition to the petit fours and champagne. Rubbish, the lot of them. Mark you, those contraptions will begin to break within the fortnight. Thoughts of the crown prince will fade in time, and with them the attentions of the king. Lord Hartworth cleared his throat as if to signal the end of the discussion. Tangerines! Were I a wealthier man, I would bet my fortunes on solar sciences. Kurt tapped the contents of his pipe into the fireplace. Priscilla, remember, a lady does not raise her voice in the company of others, Lady Hartworth scolded. You would be a fool to do such a thing. Should you ever attempt to invest in such a ridiculous venture, I swear I shall disown you and will strip you of your inheritance. Lord Hartworth glared at his son. Aurora sighed and exchanged glances with Shannon. This was not the first time her father had threatened Kurt with disownment. Contrary to what you believe, father, it would not kill me to lose the name of Hartworth. Kurt didn't seem to notice the fire in his father's eyes, but Aurora found it unmistakable. Tangerines are such a common fruit. They are not suitable for a woman of your standing. Really, sister, I must protest. How dare you? Lord Hartworth's tone brought everyone into swift silence. His face was redder than his hair, and the look in his eyes indicated he was about to strangle his youngest son. Kurt ignored the tension of the room, turning to Aurora to ask, "What do you think of the novel, sis? Riveting, is it not?" Aurora forced back a smile for fear it would only aggravate her father's indignation. "Quite. I must confess I have not been able to put it down." "You would not wish the guests to view us as common, would you, Jocelyn?" Priscilla whispered to Jocelyn as she ferociously batted her eyelashes. "I hope you are not filling your sister's head with your radical nonsense," Lord Hartworth said through gritted teeth. He had yet to take his eyes off Kurt, and his face remained a horrid shade of crimson. "Everyone knows the minds of women are easily swayed." "All the better, then," Kurt smiled thinly as he packed his pipe with fresh tobacco. "It is a novel concerning acceptance of other cultures. A sea apart." Aurora knew what her father's reaction would be. He despised Abensil, considering the piece a farce. He believed it was only time before war would be upon them again. Fortunately, a knock at the door prevented further discussion. "Dinner is served." Gerald bowed his head. Aurora sighed in relief. She felt dizzy from striving to listen to both conversations. The women rose from their seats and were followed by the men into the dining room. "At least when their mouths are full, the arguing will prove more of a challenge," Shannon whispered as she linked her arm through Aurora's. She had long, beautiful golden hair that she wore tied up in a tail behind her head, and eyes like the sea on a clear day. True, although a full mouth never stopped father from sharing his sentiments, Aurora smiled. Shannon and Aurora had been the best of friends long before Char came into the picture. Their families had been acquainted since their infancy, and being the same age, they bonded almost immediately. During the summer months, Aurora and Jocelyn would go on holiday in Demshaven with Shannon, and she would join them in Salton City for the winter. At age 12, Shannon was sent across the country to a prestigious finishing school. But upon her return 6 years later, she and the Hartworth sisters became inseparable once more. Char had never given Shannon much thought when they were children, always viewing her as the sweet and charming playmate of his sisters. He returned from his final year at university to discover she had grown into an intelligent, witty, and beautiful woman, and it did not take long to realize he could not live without her. He confided his feelings to Aurora, telling her a lump formed in his stomach, causing him excruciating pain whenever he was apart from Shannon. Since Aurora was privy to Shannon's heart and her reciprocated attachment, she encouraged her brother to reveal his feelings. Shannon accepted him without hesitation, and they were wed a few months later. Aurora found it all quite romantic, an idyllic love, lacking in problems and disputes, save those easily remedied. It was the kind of love a person sees only once, maybe twice, in a lifetime. Dinner was astonishingly quiet, other than the occasional tiff between Kurt and Lord Hartworth, and Priscilla's grumblings concerning all things pink. After the 7th course concluded, the family retired to the parlor for brandy and cards. Jocelyn excused herself, stating that she had needlework that required her attention for the evening, while Aurora and Shannon offered their assistance. "I could help as well," said Priscilla as she followed them to the door. "Why, thank you, Priscilla. That is most thoughtful of you. However, I fear too many hands would deter progress." Jocelyn kissed her sister's forehead and left. Aurora almost made a comment about how it would only displease Priscilla because they would not be using pink thread, but decided against it. "Besides, Mother will need your help." Aurora lowered her voice to a whisper. "You know what a horrid card player she is." Priscilla's frown dissipated, replaced by one of self-importance. "You are quite right, sister. She will be utterly lost without me." Giggling with their success, the 3 ladies made for Jocelyn's bedchamber. "How do you do that?" Shannon asked Aurora when they were out of earshot. Aurora situated herself comfortably amongst the pillows on the bed. "Do what?" "Find ways to goad her pride without her knowledge of your doing so." Jocelyn laughed. "Priscilla has the profound ability to turn any statement into either a compliment or personal attack, and Aurora here is blessed with a silver tongue. You see, by stating Mother was a horrid card player, she inadvertently conceded that Priscilla excels at cards." Aurora moved one of the pillows and came to lie on her stomach. "Do not act so innocent, Jocelyn. As I recall, you have employed the same trick on multiple occasions." Jocelyn dismissed the comment. Shannon, would you prefer a fresh canvas or one of Aurora's abandoned ones? I shall complete one of Aurora's. I am quite certain she will never finish it of her own accord. The canvas Shannon selected had but a single grape embroidered on it. Really, Aurora? How long did this one hold your attention? Shannon's dimples pinched her cheeks as she smiled. I detest needlework. It is assuredly my least preferred distraction, and thus it is unable to hold my attention for more than a quarter hour. She dug her elbows into the goose-down mattress and opened the palms of her hands to create a stand upon which to rest her head. Jocelyn glanced up from her bouquet of orange poppies. If Mother were to walk in here and see you like that, in the presence of our guest, she would most certainly disown you. Aurora waved a hand dismissively. Shannon is not a guest. She is family. And besides, Mother would not be able to tolerate 2 disownings in one evening. She wondered if Kurt and her father had returned to the earlier topic. Speaking of family, Aurora, why was Mr. Branswell absent this evening? Shannon kept her eyes on the thread as she spoke. Wesley has removed himself to Fallhaven for the season to call upon his great aunt, the Duchess. Her grounds are well stocked for hunting. Why do you ask? Shannon shrugged. I only assumed, now that Jocelyn is engaged, that you may be exploring your options. My options? With Mr. Branswell? Shannon, my dear, you of all people are aware that Wesley and I have never been more than close friends. He is a brother to me. I am aware of it. Shannon paused, looking at Aurora. Even so, he is amiable and close in your confidence. Priscilla is anxious for a betrothal of her own, and since you are the elder, society demands you wed before her. Priscilla has always been lacking in patience. Perhaps this will provide her with an opportunity to discover some. Aurora pulled herself into a seated position, her face suddenly hot. Although I do not have any prospects at the moment, it is my intention to marry for love, not convenience. Shannon nodded, her cheeks dimpled with a smile. It was not my desire to offend you. As you know, your happiness is of great importance to me. I only fear that your sister's impatience will compel your father to select for you. The heat dissipated in an instant, supplanted by ice. Lord Hartworth was not a patient man by any means. Char had always been his favorite, even when he chose to go off to university, despite the opinion that it was an endeavor unbecoming of a future baronet. Priscilla was much the same. Lord Hartworth would go out of his way to appease her. In his eyes, she could do no wrong. Jocelyn's gaze strayed from her needlework to her sister. I will admit my thoughts have crossed the same path. I am not suggesting you abandon all hope of finding love. Indeed, I desire nothing but that you should meet someone who makes you as happy as Char makes me, said Shannon. Yet, should an arranged marriage come to pass, I feel Mr. Branswell would be a suitable option. After a few moments of haunting silence, the ladies returned their attentions to their work, although Aurora couldn't help noticing their eyes frequently darting in her general direction. She could feel their words sinking in, and wondered how she had not arrived at the same conclusion sooner. Marriage was inevitable. She had known that since childhood, and always dismissed the thought as an eventuality. But now, it might soon become a reality. Aurora was overcome with a sudden urge to run out of the room screaming. She needed a distraction. Jocelyn, would you be so kind as to hand me the little cottage canvas I was fiddling with last week? And that's the end of chapter 2.
That was wonderful, Miss Parle. Oh my gosh, what I said earlier is just so true, that you have a gift of taking descriptive words and placing them on the page where we can imagine it in our minds and we can see it, we can smell it. I tell you what, I want that tangerine cake with the honey. And I realized that I didn't eat lunch before we started, and you're talking about a 7-course meal in there. Goodness gracious. But it is truly quite interesting. And what I'm curious about is I, as a reader, would want to continue to find out how that first chapter links in with the second one, and that even makes you more interested in the book, because now I'm thinking, well, now what's going to happen and how did she get there? And you just start questioning, which is another wonderful quality of a writer, to put that in you, you know, the inquisitiveness of it. So I want to thank you for that, but I'd like to ask you a few questions if you don't mind.
Sure.
Well, first, I'd love to understand the name of the book. Do you have a cover yet for it? Do you have anything to show us, or you want to wait on that, or what?
I do. So I actually printed the book out so I could edit it better. And it's not published yet, so I don't know if this is what the cover will look like. I've been toying with self-publishing versus finding a publisher, but this is what it currently looks like, and that's actually a picture that I took in the rainforests of Bolivia, which ties in with the book and kind of is a little foreshadowing of some place that our main character does end up later on. So that we haven't even really been introduced in the part that I read to Zelica, which is what the book is named after, but it's a place in the book.
This
So
place,
that's my cover at the time.
oh, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Now, is Zilica a real place in life, or is this something that you have created? You've created.
No, the whole world of the book is created. So the world that they live on actually it might have been confusing because I referred to the rising of the first sun and the setting of the second sun. So it's a binary star system that these people are living in, but we don't really go into the scientific part of that. But the world has two suns, and then the three main locations are Salzin, where the chapter 2 is located, Zelica, that we haven't really been introduced to yet, and Avensil, which is the country across the sea. And those are the three main continents that we deal with in this land.
That's fascinating. Now, is this just going to be a one book, or I kind of see more than just one book in this? What are your plans and what are your aspirations for this?
So it's definitely going to be part of a trilogy. At least I've started writing the second book, which I'm kind of working with the editing, one last edit of this book that I'm with of Zelica, and then I'm starting writing the second book, which is called Salzin. And I realized that I'm not going to be able to finish it in a second book, so it's gonna be at least 3 books, maybe more, but at the moment I don't think more.
Well, now as I'm imagining it and listening to it, I could just so see this in a play, or maybe on the screen. You know, I want to see these characters come to life because they're already alive in me, and that's the beauty of reading, is that I can see them, relating to each other. But I think this could even move on into different mediums, you know, that you could do in the future too. That is just fascinating to me. So now, what's the next step? You haven't published it yet. We haven't made that decision, right?
Yeah, it's funny because so I mentioned earlier that I just got back from New Zealand, and I did a 5-month hike there. And during that hike, I was giving a lot of thought as to the things that are important to me, and my writing is one of them. And in the past, I've actually been finished with the book for quite a while. I've approached literary agents and then kind of got discouraged and backed away, and approached literary agents and got discouraged and backed away. And I was thinking about it while hiking, and I'm like, how can I push myself to hike 30 kilometers or 20 miles a day for 5 months, but I can't continue to push myself with my book? And so I've realized that I need to just be more proactive. So I am currently working on a last edit before I start resubmitting it to publishers and literary agents. And that's my intention, is to go through that avenue. I've also considered self-publishing, but I think that I would want to take maybe a short course in marketing before I fully considered self-publishing, because a lot of self-publishing is you do your own marketing and getting, word of mouth out there. And so I think I'd like to be more educated in that area before I considered self-publishing as an option.
Well, I think that's a very wise decision on your part, to be more knowledgeable before you go to this next step. And you just never know, Amber. There might be somebody out there in Big Bear Connected Land who is fascinated with your work, and maybe they can contact you and get some more information and maybe steer you in a direction. Because I know for sure that you're going to get all this done, and all of these dreams are going to come true someday. And I just thank you so much for joining us and for being here. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's
Oh,
been
you're
great.
welcome. Maybe we could even have you back again reading a couple of other, chapters. We don't want to give too much of it away because we want people eventually to buy it. Let me see the cover of it again. And where did you get that name?
Where did I get what?
The name.
The name. So it's actually kind of funny. Like I said, I started writing the book when I was probably about 17 years old. And when I was 17 years old, I was obsessed with the idea of traveling to New Zealand. Um, so like the zeal in it is like New Zealand. And then because my characters end up in the jungle, I was kind of envisioning a place like the Congo in Africa. And so the Ika is like Africa. So it's like New Zealand and Africa came together and had a baby is kind of how I got the idea for the name. And that was my 17-year-old self. And then it kind of just stuck and has become so much more than that since then. So.
Oh, I love that. Don't y'all like that out there in Big Bear Connected Land? That's fascinating. This has just been a joy, Miss Amber Parle, to have you here today. And I'm wishing you the very best. Now, where are you? Are you in Big Bear right now?
I am in Big Bear right now. When, COVID graced the world, I had to come back from my trip in New Zealand. I was actually planning on being there till September, but I'm currently in Big Bear and all of my focus has been going into my writing. So that's kind of what I've been doing lately.
Well, the timing is good for that, don't you think? Since we kind of have to hang around the house anyway. So,
Oh, perfect.
boys out there and all of you adults, I hope that you've had a nice rest today with Miss Amber Parle and that she has inspired you in some way and given you just a fresh start for the weekend. So right now, I'd just like to wish all of you to be well, to be healthy, and most of all, to be happy. Toodaloo, everybody. Goodbye, Amber.
Bye.
He kissed me right here, and he said, I'll give you stars in the moon and a soul to guide you and a promise I'll never go. I'll give you hope to bring out all the life inside you and the strength that will help you grow. I'll give you truth and a future that's 20 times better than any Hollywood plot. And I thought, I'd rather have a yacht. It sounds truly crazy and true. The vision's hazy, but I swear someday there'll be a celebration throughout Oz. That's all to do with me. And I want nothing else till I die, held in such high esteem. When people see me, they will scream. For half of Oz's favorite team, the Wizard and
Shelby, if I didn't know any better, I would have never thought you'd been sick a day in your life.
That's the biggest compliment anyone has ever given me.
Poor Shelby.
Don't say that. I have my baby. I'm very happy. If this is the price I have to pay, then I have to pay it. I can live with that. Now, if I am not mistaken, someone has a present to open.
Oh, is it for me? Oh, only if you wear a size 4.
I can take it in.